In the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, where pressure would crush submarines like tin cans and darkness swallows light whole, something impossible has been waiting for millennia. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations have explored countless worlds, mapped stellar phenomena beyond imagination, and unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Yet none of them, not the crystalline Zephyrians with their quantum consciousness, not the metal-born Nexari with their perfect logic cores, not even the ancient ethereals who transcended physical form eons ago, have ever dared to venture into the crushing depths that humans call home. They thought water worlds were barren. They believed that any species emerging from such hostile liquid environments would be primitive, weak, and utterly insignificant. How could they have known that in Earth's midnight depths, where temperatures hover just above freezing and the pressure exceeds 1,000 times that of the surface, humans had not only learned to survive, but to thrive? When the first human diver descended into an alien ocean on a distant world, equipped with nothing but primitive air tanks and determination, the universe was about to learn a terrifying truth. The species they had dismissed as water monkeys were not just survivors of the deep, they were its masters. And today, in the crushing darkness of an alien sea, that mastery would save a life that had been thought lost forever, revealing a secret that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization itself. The rescue was supposed to be simple. The consequences would be anything but. Marcus Chun adjusted his breathing regulator one final time as the submersible descended toward the obsidian depths of Kepler 442b's vast ocean. The planet's 3 moons cast an eerie blue-green glow through the water above. But down here, 6,000 meters below the surface, their light was nothing more than a distant memory. His helmet's powerful LED array cut through the darkness like a knife, revealing the alien landscape that stretched endlessly in all directions. Depth now, at 6,200 meters, came the crackling voice of Dr. Sarah Martinez through his communication system. She was monitoring his dive from the research vessel Deep Explorer, floating far above. Pressure reading normal. How are you feeling down there, Marcus? Like I'm swimming in liquid space, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the incredible depth. Around him, the water pressed with a force that would have instantly crushed any unprotected human. Yet he moved through it with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his entire adult life exploring Earth's deepest trenches. Visibility is good. I can see the thermal vents about 200 meters ahead. The Kepler 442b expedition had been humanity's first major deep-sea exploration mission on an alien world. While other species in the galactic community focused on atmospheric and surface studies, humans had immediately gravitated toward the planet's vast oceans. The Zephyrian Science Council had been baffled by this choice, dismissing it as typical human recklessness. After all, who would voluntarily dive into crushing depths when perfectly safe orbital surveys could gather all necessary data? But Marcus knew something they didn't. Earth's oceans had forged humanity in ways that no other species could understand. The pressure, the darkness, the hostile environment. These weren't obstacles to overcome, but tools that had shaped humans into something unique in the galaxy. Every human child learned to swim before they could properly walk. Every human understood instinctively that the ocean was not just water, but a living entity that demanded respect, skill, and above all, courage. As he approached the thermal vent field, Marcus's trained eye immediately noticed something wrong. The water here carried a different quality of movement, subtle currents that spoke of recent disturbance. His sonar readings showed unusual debris scattered across the seafloor, pieces too regular and geometric to be natural formations. "Sarah, I'm seeing signs of crash site," Marcus reported, adjusting his buoyancy to descend more slowly. "Looks like it's been here a while, but not too long. Maybe a few weeks." "That's impossible," came Dr. Martinez's voice, tinged with confusion. "We've had this system under observation for months. No ships have gone missing in this sector." Marcus maneuvered closer to the wreckage, his lights revealing the sleek, organic curves of what was unmistakably a spacecraft. But this wasn't like any human or known alien vessel he'd ever seen. The hull seemed to shimmer with an internal light, and despite being underwater for weeks, it showed no signs of corrosion or damage from the crushing depths. "This is definitely not one of ours," Marcus said, swimming around the craft's perimeter. "The design is organic, almost like it grew rather than being built." As he explored the wreckage, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Scattered around the crash site were what appeared to be restraint systems. Massive, clearly designed for something much larger than any known intelligent species. The implications were disturbing. Either this was a prison ship, or something had been keeping a very large creature captive. "Marcus, your bio readings just spiked." Dr. Martinez's concerned voice crackled through his headset. "Are you all right?" Before he could answer, a low, thrumming sound echoed through the water around him. It was unlike anything he'd ever heard, too deep and resonant to be mechanical, too structured and rhythmic to be natural. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through his bones despite the protective barrier of his diving suit. Following his instincts, Marcus began swimming toward the source of the sound, moving away from the crash site and deeper into the trench. His lights swept across the seafloor, revealing increasingly bizarre formations, crystal-like structures that definitely weren't natural, arranged in patterns that suggested intelligence. "I'm following an acoustic signature," Marcus reported, though he had to raise his voice over the growing intensity of the thrumming sound. "Something's down here, and it's trying to communicate." "Marcus, you're exceeding safe exploration parameters," Dr. Martinez warned. "Your current depth is 6,800 meters. Even with your suit, we're pushing the limits of what's safe." But Marcus had spent his career pushing those limits. As a deep-sea rescue specialist, he'd pulled survivors from depths where no other human could operate. He'd learned to read the ocean's moods, to understand its subtle communications, to work with the crushing pressure rather than fight against it. And right now, every instinct he'd developed over 2 decades of deep diving was telling him that something down here needed help. The thrumming sound grew more urgent, more desperate. Marcus realized it wasn't just random noise. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm that reminded him of distress signals. Someone or something was calling for help. As he descended further into the trench, his lights began to reveal something that defied all logic and reason. Coiled among the crystal formations, barely moving but clearly alive, was a creature of impossible size and beauty. It was easily 40 meters long, its body covered in scales that shifted color like living opals. Multiple pairs of wings, clearly designed for flight rather than swimming, were tangled in metallic debris for what appeared to be the same vessel Marcus had discovered earlier. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this," Marcus whispered, his voice filled with awe. "I'm looking at what can only be described as a dragon." The creature's massive head turned toward him as he approached, and Marcus found himself staring into eyes the size of dinner plates. They were filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably sapient, and something else, fear, pain, and a desperate hope that made Marcus's chest tighten with emotion. "A dragon?" Dr. Martinez's voice was skeptical. "Marcus, you might be experiencing nitrogen narcosis. Those depths can play tricks with perception." But Marcus knew exactly what he was seeing. The creature was clearly not aquatic. Its body was designed for atmospheric flight, not underwater movement. Somehow, it had ended up in the deepest part of an alien ocean, trapped by debris that looked suspiciously like the restraint systems he'd seen at the crash site. As he moved closer, the dragon's struggles became more apparent. Heavy metallic cables, clearly of artificial origin, were wrapped around its body and wings. The materials were alien in design, but familiar in purpose. These were prison restraints designed to hold something powerful and dangerous. But looking into those intelligent eyes, Marcus saw no malice, only desperation and exhaustion. The creature had been trapped here for weeks, possibly longer. At these depths, Even a being clearly evolved for atmospheric flight had somehow managed to survive, but it was weakening. The distress calls Marcus had been hearing weren't just random noise. They were a sophisticated attempt at communication, a plea for help from a being intelligent enough to recognize that the strange, small creature approaching it might be its only hope for survival. Marcus began to assess the situation with the clinical detachment of a professional rescue diver. The dragon was tangled in at least 6 different restraint cables, each one secured to the crystalline formations on the seafloor. The metal was unlike anything in the galactic database. It seemed to actively resist cutting tools, and the more the creature struggled, the tighter the bonds became. "Sarah, I need you to contact the Deep Explorer immediately," Marcus said, already beginning to formulate a rescue plan. "I'm going to need every piece of cutting equipment we have, plus the emergency medical kit. Marcus, whatever you're seeing down there, we need to follow protocol. You cannot attempt a rescue operation at those depths without proper support and authorization from the Galactic Exploration Committee." But Marcus was already moving. Protocol was for normal situations, and there was nothing normal about a dragon trapped in the deepest part of an alien ocean. In his years of deep-sea rescue work, he learned that sometimes the difference between life and death came down to seconds, not committee approvals. As he approached the trapped creature, Marcus began speaking in the calm, steady voice he'd used with countless rescue victims over the years. It didn't matter that this being probably couldn't understand his words. Tone was universal, and the dragon needed to know that help had arrived. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus said softly, swimming slowly toward the creature's massive head. "I know you're scared, and I know it hurts, but I'm here to help. We're going to get you out of this mess." The dragon's struggles ceased as Marcus approached. Those massive, intelligent eyes fixed on him with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. For a moment, human and dragon regarded each other in the crushing darkness of an alien sea, 2 beings separated by evolution, biology, and countless light years, yet connected by the universal need for compassion and aid. Marcus reached out slowly, his gloved hand coming to rest on the creature's snout. The dragon's skin was warm to the touch, even through the protective layers of his diving suit. He could feel a subtle vibration. The creature was humming, a sound too low for human ears to detect, but clear through the tactile contact. "That's it," Marcus said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you, but we need to work together if we're going to get you free." As if understanding his words, the dragon grew still, watching as Marcus began to examine the restraint system more closely. Each cable was secured with what appeared to be an adaptive locking mechanism. The more force applied, the stronger the hold became. It was a diabolical system, designed to ensure that the stronger and more intelligent the prisoner, the more effectively they would be trapped. But Marcus had dealt with similar systems before. In Earth's deepest trenches, he'd encountered human-made restraints that worked on similar principles, usually attached to deep-sea mining equipment or research installations. The key wasn't to fight the mechanism directly, but to understand its logic and work around it. Marcus began swimming around the dragon's body, cataloging each restraint point and looking for the system's weak points. The creature remained perfectly still, seeming to understand that any movement might interfere with the rescue attempt. The level of intelligence and self-control this demonstrated was remarkable and deeply troubling. This was clearly a sapient being, as intelligent as any species in the galactic community. Yet someone had captured it, restrained it, and apparently intended to transport it somewhere against its will. The crash that had left it trapped in this alien ocean was probably an accident, but the original imprisonment had been very much intentional. As Marcus worked, he began to piece together what must have happened. The dragon had been a prisoner aboard the crashed vessel, probably being transported for purposes he didn't want to think about too closely. When the ship went down, emergency systems had probably triggered, jettisoning the prisoner in what was meant to be a secure holding system. Instead, it had become a death trap in the ocean depths. "Marcus, your air supply is at 60%, Dr. Martinez's voice crackled through his headset. You need to begin ascent procedures soon. Not yet, Marcus replied, examining what appeared to be a primary control node in the restraint system. I think I can get these restraints off, but I need more time. Marcus, even with your enhanced diving equipment, you cannot safely stay at those depths indefinitely. Please begin emergency ascent procedures. But Marcus had made his decision. This creature had been trapped down here for weeks, slowly dying in the crushing darkness. He wasn't going to abandon it now because of safety protocols. Besides, he'd worked in worse conditions before, and every instinct told him that the dragon was running out of time. The restraint system, Marcus realized, was controlled by a central processing unit embedded in one of the crystalline formations. The entire setup was designed to use the natural formations as anchor points, while the artificial intelligence in the control unit managed the individual restraints. If he could disable the control unit, the entire system should release automatically. The problem was reaching it. The control unit was positioned directly beneath the dragon's body, probably to prevent exactly the kind of rescue attempt Marcus was planning. He would have to convince the creature to shift position, exposing the control unit without triggering the restraint system's defensive protocols. Marcus swam back to the dragon's head and placed both hands on its snout. Through the tactile contact, he could feel the creature's awareness, its intelligence, and something else, a deep, abiding sadness that spoke of loss and betrayal. I need you to trust me, Marcus said softly. Can you understand what I'm saying? The dragon's response was immediate and shocking. Instead of the low, thrumming Marcus had been hearing, the creature began producing a series of clicks, whistles, and tonal variations that were unmistakably linguistic in nature. It was trying to speak to him. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat as the implications hit him. This wasn't just any trapped creature. This was a member of a sapient species, probably one unknown to the galactic community. Someone had captured and imprisoned a sentient being, and only the crash that had stranded them both in this alien ocean had prevented whatever horrible fate had been planned. I can't understand your language yet, Marcus said, but I can hear that you're trying to communicate. That's enough for now. I'm going to get you out of here, and then we'll figure out how to talk properly. The dragon seemed to understand the intent, if not the words. Slowly, carefully, it began to shift its massive body, revealing the control unit embedded in the crystalline formation below. The movement triggered warnings from the restraint system. Several of the cables began to tighten automatically, but the dragon endured the increased pressure without complaint. Marcus dove toward the control unit, his trained hands working quickly to assess its construction. The technology was sophisticated but not beyond his understanding. During his years of deep-sea rescue work, he'd learned to jury-rig and disable all kinds of alien technology recovered from the ocean depths. This system was more advanced than most, but it operated on principles he could recognize. The control unit had multiple redundancy systems and what appeared to be anti-tampering measures, but it also had one critical flaw. It had been designed for operation in atmospheric conditions, not underwater. The crushing pressure and corrosive nature of seawater had already begun to affect its performance. Marcus just needed to accelerate that process. Using his suit's emergency cutting tools, Marcus began carefully removing the unit's protective housing. As water began to seep into the internal components, he could see system warnings flashing on the unit's display panels. The artificial intelligence running the restraint system was trying to compensate for the unexpected environmental factors, but it was fighting a losing battle. Come on, Marcus muttered, working faster as he watched his air supply continue to drop. Just give me 5 more minutes. Above him, the dragon waited with superhuman patience, enduring the increasing pressure from the restraint cables as the system tried to maintain its hold. Marcus could feel the creature's pain through the vibrations in the water, but also its determination. Whatever this being was, wherever it had come from, it had the kind of courage and endurance that Marcus recognized from his fellow deep-sea rescue workers. Finally, with a cascade of sparks visible even through the water, the control unit's main processor failed. Immediately, the restraint cables began to retract, their grip loosening as their controlling intelligence went offline. The dragon's massive form began to straighten as the pressure was released, and Marcus found himself face to face with a creature of impossible beauty and grace. Free of its bonds, the dragon was magnificent. Its scales shifted through a spectrum of colors that had no names in any human language, and when it spread its wings, designed for atmospheric flight but still magnificent underwater, it displaced enough water to create currents that Marcus could feel from 20 meters away. But even as he admired the creature's beauty, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Now that he could see the dragon clearly, he could make out details that had been hidden while it was restrained. Scars covered its body, not the random marks of accident or natural conflict, but precise, deliberate cuts that spoke of scientific experimentation. Someone had been studying this creature, probably against its will, and the evidence of their work was written across its magnificent form. The dragon seemed to notice Marcus's horror as he took in the extent of the scarring. Those massive, intelligent eyes fixed on his with an expression that was unmistakably shame. The creature was embarrassed by its appearance, ashamed of what had been done to it, and probably afraid that Marcus would be disgusted or frightened by what he saw. Marcus swam forward immediately, placing both hands against the dragon's snout in what he hoped would be recognized as a gesture of comfort and acceptance. "No," he said firmly, looking directly into those massive eyes. "There's nothing wrong with you. What they did to you, that's not who you are. You're beautiful, and you're brave, and you're free now." The dragon's response was immediate and overwhelming. The creature began producing a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, a complex harmony of tones that seemed to express gratitude, relief, and something that might have been joy. The sound reverberated through the water and through Marcus's bones, and he realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. This was first contact, not the formal diplomatic first contact that usually happened when new species joined the galactic community, but something far more primitive and profound. Here, in the crushing depths of an alien ocean, two completely different forms of life had met, communicated, and formed a bond based on nothing more than compassion and mutual need. "Sarah, are you monitoring this?" Marcus asked, though he never took his eyes off the dragon. "Marcus, whatever's happening down there, your vital signs are off the charts. You need to surface immediately. You're exceeding all safe diving parameters." But Marcus wasn't ready to leave yet. He needed to know more about this creature, about where it had come from, about who had imprisoned it, and why. Most importantly, he needed to figure out how to help it get home. The dragon seemed to understand his concern. Moving with surprising grace for such a massive creature, it began swimming in a slow circle around Marcus, its massive wings creating currents that made swimming easier rather than harder. It was showing him that despite its size and obvious strength, it meant no harm. As it moved, Marcus noticed something else that sent chills down his spine. The dragon's body bore not just scars from experimentation, but also what appeared to be technological implants. Small metallic devices were embedded at regular intervals along its spine, and wings, devices that pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light. Someone hadn't just captured and studied this creature, they had modified it. The implications were horrifying. This was evidence of the kind of unethical experimentation that was supposedly banned throughout the galaxy, the kind of research that treated sapient beings as laboratory specimens rather than individuals with rights and dignity. Marcus's mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. If this dragon was the victim of a legal experimentation, then its rescue was just the beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were beings conducting research that violated every principle of galactic law and ethics. And if they had done this to one dragon, how many others might be suffering the same fate? The dragon completed its circle and returned to hover directly in front of Marcus. Up close, he could see that despite the scars and implants, the creature was healthy and strong. Whatever had been done to it, the dragon had survived with its spirit intact. But Looking into those intelligent eyes, Marcus could also see the deep trauma that lay beneath the surface. This being had been betrayed by creatures it had probably trusted. It had been imprisoned, experimented upon, and modified against its will. The fact that it was showing such trust and gratitude toward Marcus, a member of a species it had never encountered before, spoke to a level of courage and resilience that left him humbled. "I don't know how to get you home," Marcus said softly, knowing the dragon couldn't understand his words but hoping it would pick up on his tone. "But I promise you this, I'm going to make sure you're safe. And I'm going to find out who did this to you." The dragon's response was to gently touch Marcus's helmet with the tip of its snout. The gesture was so delicate, so careful, that it brought tears to Marcus's eyes. This massive, powerful creature was being gentle with him, protecting him even though he was the one who had come to its rescue. "Marcus, your air supply is now at 30%. Dr. Martinez's voice was urgent now. "You must begin ascent immediately. This is not a request." Marcus knew she was right. He had pushed his equipment and his own physical limits far beyond what was safe, and staying any longer would put both him and the dragon at risk if something went wrong with his ascent. But how could he leave? This creature had been trapped alone in the crushing darkness for weeks, and now it was free but stranded. Dragons were clearly evolved for atmospheric flight, not underwater survival. Even if this one had somehow adapted to the aquatic environment, it couldn't stay down here forever. As if reading his thoughts, the dragon began swimming upward, its massive form moving through the water with surprising grace. It seemed to understand that Marcus needed to ascend, and it was choosing to accompany him rather than remain in the depths. Marcus began his ascent alongside the dragon, maintaining the careful decompression schedule that would prevent the bends from killing him during the long journey to the surface. As they rose together through the dark water, he found himself wondering what would happen when they reached the surface. How would his research team react to the sight of a 40-meter dragon emerging from the alien ocean? How would the galactic community respond to proof of illegal experimentation on sapient beings? But those are questions for later. Right now, all that mattered was getting both of them safely to the surface. As they ascended through the midnight depths of the alien ocean, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this rescue was just the beginning of something much larger and more significant than he could possibly imagine. The dragon swam beside him with easy, powerful strokes, its bioluminescent scales providing enough light to illuminate their path through the darkness. Every few minutes, it would look over at Marcus as if checking to make sure he was all right, and each time their eyes met, Marcus felt the same sense of connection and purpose that had driven him to become a rescue diver in the first place. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences arose from his first contact, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. In the crushing depths of an alien ocean, he had found not just a creature in need of rescue, but a being whose courage and dignity had changed his understanding of what it meant to be intelligent life in a vast and often hostile universe. As they continued their slow ascent toward the surface, Marcus began to realize that his life, and possibly the course of galactic civilization itself, had just changed forever. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came when the sonar readings on the research vessel Deep Explorer began showing impossible data. Dr. Sarah Martinez stared at her instruments in disbelief as they registered a massive object ascending from the depths alongside Marcus Chen's diving signature. "That can't be right," muttered Dr. Kenji Nakamura, the team's xenobiologist, as he leaned over her shoulder to study the readings. "The sonar is showing something the size of a small spacecraft rising with Marcus. System malfunction. All diagnostics are green," Sarah replied, her voice tight with concern. "And Marcus's vitals are stable, but his ascent rate is slower than protocol requires. He should have been up 20 minutes ago." Captain Elena Rodriguez, the expedition commander, joined them at the monitoring station. As a former military officer, she had overseen enough unusual situations to know when something was genuinely unprecedented. "Range to contact. 400 meters and closing, Sarah reported. Whatever it is, it's big, it's alive, and it's following Marcus to the surface. The bridge fell silent except for the steady ping of the sonar and the gentle hum of the ship's environmental systems. Through the viewport, they could see the alien planet's 3 moons reflecting off the ocean's surface, creating patterns of light that shifted and danced with the subtle swells. It was a peaceful scene that was about to be shattered by the emergence of something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy. There, Dr. Nakamura said suddenly, pointing toward the water about 50 meters off the starboard bow. Do you see that glow? At first, it was just a faint luminescence beneath the surface, like distant lightning seen through clouds. But as they watched, the glow grew stronger and more defined, rising steadily toward the surface. The color was unlike anything any of them had seen before, a shifting spectrum of blues and greens that seemed to pulse with its own inner rhythm. All crew to emergency stations, Captain Rodriguez ordered, her training taking over. Prepare for potential first contact protocols. The word sent a chill through everyone on the bridge. First contact protocols were theoretical procedures that every exploration team trained for, but never expected to use. They covered everything from communication attempts with new species to defensive measures if the contact proved hostile. But none of those protocols have been designed for whatever was rising from the depths of an alien ocean. Captain, came Marcus's voice through the communication system, crackling with interference from the depth and distance. I need you to prepare the medical bay for a patient. Large patient. Very large. Marcus, what exactly are you bringing up with you? Captain Rodriguez demanded. The pause before Marcus answered seemed to stretch forever. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of awe, excitement, and something that might have been fear. Ma'am, I've rescued a dragon. The bridge erupted in confused voices as everyone tried to speak at once. But Captain Rodriguez silenced them with a sharp gesture. Repeat your last transmission. Marcus, did you say dragon? Affirmative. 40 meters long, sapient, and bearing evidence of medical experimentation. It was trapped by restraint systems from a crashed vessel. I managed to free it, and it's accompanying me to the surface voluntarily. Dr. Nakamura was already pulling up everything in the galactic database about dragon-like species, his fingers flying across his tablet. There are no known draconic species in the current galactic catalog, he reported. A few extinct species on various worlds showed similar characteristics, but nothing that survived to achieve spaceflight. Then, either our databases are incomplete, or we're dealing with something completely new, Captain Rodriguez said grimly. Sarah, what's Marcus's condition? Approaching decompression limits, but stable. He's followed emergency ascent protocols perfectly. But Captain, if what he's bringing up is really 40 meters long. I know. Our medical bay isn't designed for patients that size. Captain Rodriguez activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, prepare for emergency surface contact. Medical team, to the forward deck. Engineering, I need the main cargo hold converted for large-scale life support immediately. As the crew rushed to prepare for the unprecedented situation, the glow beneath the water continued to intensify. Now they could make out shapes within the light, something massive and serpentine, moving with grace and purpose through the dark water. 20 meters to surface, Sarah reported, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone on the bridge moved to the forward viewports, watching as the impossible became real. The water began to churn and foam, and then, suddenly, Marcus Chun broke the surface in his distinctive orange diving suit, his emergency beacon flashing against the alien starlight. But it was what emerged beside him that left the entire crew speechless. The dragon that rose from the depths was magnificent beyond description. Its scales caught and reflected the planet's moonlight in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Its massive head, easily the size of a small vehicle, turned to survey the research vessel with eyes that glowed with obvious intelligence. When it spread its wings, wings clearly designed for atmospheric flight rather than swimming. The span was so enormous that it cast shadows across the entire length of the Deep Explorer. "Sweet mother of space," Captain Rodriguez breathed. "It's beautiful." Dr. Nakamura was frantically recording everything, his instruments capturing video, audio, and sensor data that would revolutionize xenobiology if they lived long enough to transmit it back to Earth. The bioluminescence alone represents an entirely new form of photon emission, he muttered as he worked. And those wing structures, the aerodynamics, are impossibly efficient. But even as they marveled at the creature's beauty, the more observant crew members were beginning to notice details that painted a darker picture. Dr. Lisa Park, the team's chief medical officer, was studying the dragon through high-powered binoculars, and what she saw made her face pale. "Captain," she said quietly, "that creature has been surgically modified. I can see implants, scarring patterns consistent with experimental procedures, and what appear to be monitoring devices embedded in its hide." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't just first contact with a new species. This was evidence of crimes that violated every ethical standard recognized by the galactic community. Someone had captured this obviously intelligent being and subjected it to medical experimentation against its will. "Get Marcus aboard immediately," Captain Rodriguez ordered, "and prepare to offer assistance to our guest." The rescue operation was unlike anything any of them had ever attempted. Marcus was hauled aboard using standard recovery procedures, but the dragon presented a unique challenge. It was too large to bring aboard the ship, and its natural habitat was clearly atmospheric rather than aquatic. Yet it seemed to understand that the humans were trying to help, floating patiently in the water while the crew worked to establish some form of communication and support. As soon as Marcus was back on deck, he pulled off his helmet and immediately began briefing Captain Rodriguez. "The crash site down. There is from a prison ship," he said urgently. This dragon was being held against its will, probably for experimental purposes. When the ship went down, the emergency systems trapped it in the depths instead of saving it. "How do you know it's intelligent?" Dr. Nakamura asked, still recording everything. "It communicated with me. Not in any language I recognize, but definitely structured communication. And the way it behaved during the rescue, it understood what I was trying to do and cooperated perfectly. This is a sapient being, not just an animal." Dr. Park had been studying the dragon through her medical scanners, and what she found confirmed their worst fears. "Marcus is right about the experimentation. I'm detecting at least a dozen artificial implants, surgical scars and patterns consistent with vivisection, and chemical traces suggesting long-term pharmaceutical intervention. Someone has been using this creature as a test subject." The dragon itself seemed aware of their discussion. It had positioned itself alongside the research vessel, its massive head just above water level, watching the humans with obvious curiosity. When Dr. Park pointed her scanner in its direction, the creature actually tilted its head to give her a better angle, as if it understood that she was trying to help assess its condition. "It's responding to our body language," Dr. Nakamura observed excitedly. "Look at how it tracks our movements, how it positions itself to facilitate our examinations. The level of intelligence we're seeing here is remarkable." Captain Rodriguez was already thinking ahead to the larger implications. "We need to contact Fleet Command immediately. This isn't just a rescue situation. It's potential evidence of war crimes. If someone in the galaxy is conducting illegal experimentation on sapient beings." "Ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Torres from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not on any standard frequency, and the translation protocols aren't recognizing the language structure." "Put it through," Captain Rodriguez ordered. What emerged from the ship's speakers was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was clearly structured communication, complex, layered, with rhythms and harmonies that suggested a sophisticated linguistic system. But it was also beautiful, almost musical in its complexity. "It's the dragon," Marcus said with absolute certainty. "It's trying to talk to us." Dr. Nakamura was already running the transmission through every linguistic analysis program in their database. "The structure is incredibly complex," he reported. "Multiple simultaneous information tracks, harmonic variations that seem to carry meaning, and embedded mathematical relationships that suggest a level of abstract thinking on par with any species in the galactic community." As they worked to understand the dragon's communication attempts, the creature itself continued to display remarkable intelligence and patience. It had moved to a position where it could maintain visual contact with the humans while staying far enough away to avoid accidentally damaging their vessel. Every movement was calculated and deliberate, designed to reassure rather than threaten. "The medical scans are becoming clearer," Dr. Park reported. "Whatever was done to this creature, it was extensive and recent. Some of these implants are still actively transmitting data." "Transmitting to where?" Captain Rodriguez asked sharply. Dr. Park checked her instruments. "Unknown. The signals are encrypted and using quantum entanglement protocols. Whoever installed these devices has been monitoring this creature remotely, possibly for months or years." The implications were staggering. Not only had someone captured and experimented on a sapient being, but they had been tracking its every movement and biological function in real time. The dragon they had rescued was essentially a living surveillance device, monitored and controlled by unknown parties who might still be watching. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out urgently, "I'm detecting multiple spacecraft approaching our position. Unknown configuration, but they're coming in fast." Captain Rodriguez felt ice form in her stomach. Range and bearing: 3 vessels approaching from different vectors. Estimated time to contact: 6 minutes. "Battle stations," Captain Rodriguez ordered. "All hands to emergency positions. Prepare for potential hostile contact." As alarms began sounding throughout the ship, the dragon's behavior changed dramatically. The creature that had been calm and cooperative suddenly began producing urgent, distress sounds. Its massive form thrashed in the water, and the bioluminescent patterns on its scales shifted to rapid, pulsing colors that clearly indicated extreme agitation. "It knows those ships," Marcus said with certainty, "and it's terrified of them." Dr. Nakamura's analysis confirmed their worst fears. The transmission patterns from the dragon's implants have changed. They're now broadcasting a location beacon on multiple frequencies. Those approaching vessels are homing in on our position using the dragon as a tracking device. Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "Prepare to defend ourselves and our guest. If those ships are responsible for what was done to the dragon, we're not letting them take it back." The approaching vessels were unlike anything in the standard galactic fleet databases. They were sleek, predatory in design, and bore no identification markings or national symbols. As they closed distance, the Deep Explorer-S sensors revealed that they were heavily armed with energy weapons that could easily destroy a research vessel. "Unknown vessels. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Earth research vessel Deep Explorer." She transmitted on all standard frequencies. "You are approaching a scientific expedition in violation of galactic exploration protocols. State your intentions immediately." The response came not in words, but in action. The lead vessel opened fire with what appeared to be some form of neural disruptor, designed not to destroy the research ship, but to incapacitate its crew. The beam struck the Deep Explorer-S shields, and immediately several crew members collapsed, unconscious. "Evasive maneuvers," Captain Rodriguez ordered, though she knew their research vessel was no match for the approaching warships. "Launch all data buoys immediately. Get everything we've recorded about the dragon transmitted to Fleet Command before." Her orders were cut short as the second vessel fired what appeared to be some form of tractor beam directly at the dragon. The massive creature let out a sound of pure anguish as the beam locked onto it, beginning to drag it away from the research vessel toward the approaching ships. But the dragon was not going quietly. Despite weeks of imprisonment and torture, Despite the restraint implants and tracking devices embedded in its body, the magnificent creature began to fight back with a fury that shook the alien ocean. Its wings, designed for atmospheric flight, proved surprisingly effective underwater, as it used them to generate massive currents that disrupted the tractor beam's effectiveness. Its tail, easily 20 meters long, lashed out at the approaching vessel with enough force to dent its hull. And from its throat came sounds that were no longer attempts at communication. These were roars of defiance that made the very air vibrate with power. "The dragon is fighting back," Marcus reported, though everyone could see it for themselves. But those restraint implants are beginning to activate. Look at its movement patterns. Something is interfering with its motor control. Dr. Park was studying her medical scanners in horror. The implants are designed to override the creature's nervous system. They're trying to paralyze it remotely. "Can we do anything to help?" Captain Rodriguez demanded. "The implants are using quantum entanglement communication. We need to physically access them to disrupt the signals, and that would require getting close enough to perform surgery on a 40-meter dragon while it's under attack by hostile spacecraft." Marcus was already suiting up again. "Then, that's what we do." "Absolutely not," Captain Rodriguez said firmly. "I'm not sending you back into the water in the middle of a combat situation." But even as they argued, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The dragon's struggles were becoming weaker as the restraint implants gained more control over its nervous system. The tractor beam was slowly, but inexorably dragging the magnificent creature toward the waiting ships, and everyone could see the despair in those intelligent eyes as it realized what was happening. "Captain," Dr. Nakamura called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups in the approaching vessels. Whatever they're planning to do to the dragon, they're preparing to do it on a scale that suggests." His words were cut off as the lead vessel fired a beam of energy unlike anything any of them had ever seen. Instead of striking the dragon directly, the beam created what appeared to be a containment field around the creature, a shimmering barrier that immediately began to compress. "They're going to crush it," Dr. Park said in horror. "The containment field is designed to shrink progressively. They're going to compress the dragon down to a size that fits in their cargo hold, regardless of whether it survives the process." The dragon's anguished cries filled the air as the containment field began to constrict around its massive form. But even in its pain and terror, the creature managed to do something that none of the watching humans expected. It looked directly at Marcus Chun, floating in the water beside the research vessel, and began to sing. The sound was unlike anything they had heard before. Not the structured communication attempts of earlier, not the roars of defiance, but something that transcended language entirely. It was a song of gratitude, of farewell, and of hope. The dragon was thanking them for the brief taste of freedom it had experienced, and asking them to remember what they had witnessed. "I can't watch this," Marcus said, his voice breaking with emotion. "We have to do something. The containment field is too powerful," Captain Rodriguez said, though her own voice was tight with grief and rage. "Our weapons aren't designed for this kind of technology. We're a research vessel, not a warship." But even as she spoke, something unexpected began to happen. The dragon's song was changing, growing deeper and more complex. The creature was no longer simply expressing emotion. It was doing something to the water around it, something that made the ocean itself begin to respond. "The acoustic frequencies," Dr. Nakamura said suddenly. "It's using harmonic resonance to affect the molecular structure of the water." As they watched in amazement, the ocean around the dragon began to behave in ways that defied physics. The water itself was becoming more dense, more resistant to the energy fields trying to contain the creature. The dragon was somehow using its own biology to turn the alien sea into a weapon against its captors. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Park. "It's manipulating the quantum state of the water molecules through acoustic vibration. The level of understanding required to do that." The containment field began to flicker and spark as it encountered the altered water. The dragon's song grew stronger, more complex, and suddenly, the ocean around the alien vessels began to behave like a solid rather than a liquid. The ships found themselves trapped, their engines unable to function in water that had become as dense as metal. Now, Captain Rodriguez ordered, "Full power to engines. Get us out of here while they're immobilized." But Marcus was already back in the water, swimming toward the dragon with determination that bordered on madness. "I'm not leaving without our friend," he called back to the ship. As the research vessel pulled away from the immobilized alien warships, Marcus reached the dragon just as the containment field finally collapsed under the stress of trying to function in the transformed water. The creature was weak, exhausted from its efforts, but alive and free. "Come on," Marcus said, placing his hands on the dragon's massive snout. "We need to get you somewhere safe." The dragon's response was to wrap one of its wings gently around Marcus, creating a protective bubble as they began to ascend together toward the surface. But even as they rose, Marcus could see new signals flashing from the dragon's restraint implants. More ships would be coming, and next time they would be prepared for the dragon's acoustic abilities. "Sarah," Marcus called through his communication system, "I need you to prepare for emergency medical procedures. We're going to have to remove those implants if we want to give our friend any chance of true freedom." "Marcus, we don't have the facilities for that kind of surgery," Dr. Martinez replied. "And even if we did, operating on a completely unknown alien physiology. Then we'll have to figure it out," Marcus said grimly, watching as the dragon struggled to maintain its position in the water. "Because the alternative is letting them drag this intelligent being back into captivity and torture." As they broke the surface together, Marcus could see the research vessel in the distance, its engines glowing as it maintained position away from the immobilized alien warships. But he could also see new lights in the sky. More ships were coming, drawn by the signals from the dragon's implants. The rescue had been successful, but their real challenges were just beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were beings who treated sapient creatures as experimental subjects. They had technology that could control minds, compress matter, and track their victims across interstellar distances. And they would not stop until they reclaimed their prize. As Marcus and the dragon approached the research vessel together, both of them knew that their lives had changed forever. The human had saved a dragon from the depths of an alien ocean, but in doing so, he had also uncovered evidence of crimes that could shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The question now was whether they would live long enough to expose the truth, or whether they would become the next victims of whoever was conducting these horrific experiments. As the dragon's grateful eyes met Marcus's determined gaze, both beings understood that their fates were now linked, for better or worse. In the distance, the alien warships began to break free from the transformed water, their engines roaring back to life as they prepared to resume their pursuit. The real battle was just beginning. Dr. Lisa Park had performed surgery in challenging conditions before, but nothing had prepared her for operating on a 40-meter dragon while hiding in an asteroid field with hostile ships hunting them through space. The converted cargo hold of the Deep Explorer buzzed with hastily rigged medical equipment as she prepared to remove the tracking implants that made their patient a living beacon for their pursuers. "Vitals are stable," reported Dr. Nakamura, monitoring the dragon's life signs through a combination of human medical equipment and improvised alien technology they'd salvaged from the crash site. But these implants are incredibly sophisticated. They're integrated into the nervous system at a cellular level. The dragon lay as still as death, trusting these strange beings who had rescued it from the depths. Its massive form filled the entire cargo hold, wings folded carefully to avoid damaging the ship's infrastructure. Every few minutes, its enormous eyes would track to Marcus Chun, who had insisted on being present despite having no medical training. "The implants aren't just tracking devices," Dr. Park observed as she studied the detailed scans. "They're also pain inducers, behavioral modifiers, and what appears to be some form of memory suppression technology. Whoever did this wasn't just monitoring our patient. They were controlling its thoughts and emotions. Captain Rodriguez watched from the observation deck above the makeshift surgical suite, her face grim as she monitored both the operation and the tactical situation. Update on our pursuers. Lieutenant Torres checked his instruments. 3 ships still tracking us, but they've been maintaining distance since we entered the asteroid field. They know where we are, but they're not attacking. They want the dragon back alive, Marcus said, his hand resting gently on the creature's snout. If they just wanted to eliminate the evidence, they would have destroyed us by now. As Dr. Park began the delicate process of accessing the first implant, the dragon made a sound that was barely audible but clearly indicated discomfort. Marcus immediately began speaking in the calm, steady tone he'd learned during his years of rescue work, and, remarkably, the creature's distress seemed to diminish. The patient is responding to Marcus's voice, Dr. Nakamura noted with scientific fascination. There's a measurable decrease in stress indicators when he speaks. We've formed a bond, Marcus explained simply. Trust is a powerful thing, even between species that have never met before. As the surgery progressed, Dr. Park began to uncover evidence that made her increasingly disturbed. These implants are manufactured, she reported. This isn't experimental technology, it's mass-produced. Whoever is doing this has been at it for a long time, and they're doing it to multiple subjects. The first implant came free with a soft clicking sound, and immediately the dragon's stress levels dropped dramatically. But as Dr. Park studied the device, her face went pale. Captain, you need to see this, she called out. Captain Rodriguez hurried down to the surgical suite and found Dr. Park holding the extracted implant under a magnifying scanner. What am I looking at? Manufacturer's markings, Dr. Park said grimly. And they're not from any unknown alien civilization. These implants are made by Nexus Biotech, a subsidiary of the Zephyrian Science Consortium. The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. The Zephyrians were one of the founding members of the Galactic Council, respected throughout the galaxy for their advanced scientific knowledge and ethical research practices. If they were involved in illegal experimentation on sapient beings, that's impossible, Lieutenant Torres said from the communication station. The Zephyrians have the strictest research ethics in the galaxy. They've been champions of sapient rights for centuries. Maybe not all of them, Captain Rodriguez said darkly. Dr. Park, continue the surgery. We need to remove all the implants before we can trust anything we're seeing here. As the operation continued, the team began to piece together a picture that was far more disturbing than a simple case of scientific misconduct. The implants weren't just controlling the dragon. They were recording everything it experienced, every thought and memory, transmitting the data to unknown locations for analysis. It's a consciousness mapping project, Dr. Nakamura realized as he studied the implant data. They're not just studying the dragon's biology, they're studying its mind. They're trying to understand how sapient consciousness works at the most fundamental level. To what end? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Park's expression was grim as she removed the third implant. If you can map and understand consciousness completely, you can transfer it, copy it, control it. The dragon seemed to understand that they were discussing something important about its situation. Despite the ongoing surgery, it managed to turn its massive head slightly toward the humans, its intelligent eyes fixed on their faces as if trying to read their expressions. It knows, Marcus said with certainty. It understands what they were doing to it. As if confirming his words, the dragon began to produce a series of sounds that their translation software was finally beginning to parse. The linguistic analysis programs had been running continuously since their first contact, learning from every interaction, and now they were starting to produce rudimentary translations. Stolen memories taken away, came the halting mechanical voice of the translator. Others, like me, suffering still. The words sent chills through everyone in the surgical suite. This dragon wasn't just a victim, it was a witness. It knew about other members of its species who were still being held captive, still being subjected to the same horrific procedures. How many others? Dr. Nakamura asked, directing the question toward the dragon. The creature's response was immediate and heartbreaking. Using a combination of sounds and gestures with its winged tips, it indicated numbers that made everyone in the room feel sick. Dozens, possibly hundreds of its kind were still in captivity, their consciousness being mapped and studied by researchers who saw them as experimental subjects rather than intelligent beings. Dr. Park had removed half of the implants when something unexpected happened. As each device was extracted, the dragon's communications became clearer and more sophisticated. It wasn't just that the translation software was improving. The creature itself was regaining access to memories and knowledge that had been suppressed by the neural implants. Viridian, the dragon said through the translator, its voice gaining strength and clarity with each word. Was a scholar of the deep flights. My people were explorers of the cosmic winds. The name sent Dr. Nakamura scrambling through the galactic databases. Deep flights, that terminology appears in some of the oldest archaeological records. There are references to a spacefaring civilization that called themselves the Deep Flight Collective, but they supposedly went extinct thousands of years ago. Not extinct, Viridian corrected, the translator now rendering its speech with remarkable clarity. Hidden, scattered, hunted. As more implants were removed, Viridian's story began to emerge. The deep flight dragons had once been one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, masters of both atmospheric flight and space travel. Their ships were living vessels, grown rather than built, capable of traversing the cosmic winds that flowed between stars. But their civilization had fallen not to war or natural disaster, but to systematic kidnapping and enslavement. Species after species had captured dragons for their unique abilities, their capacity for acoustic manipulation of matter, their natural understanding of quantum physics, their ability to navigate by sensing gravitational fields across vast distances. We became tools, Viridian explained, its voice heavy with centuries of pain. Our children stolen, our adults enslaved. Those who resisted were experimented upon, made into examples of what happens to those who fight back. The full horror of the situation was becoming clear. The dragons hadn't just been victims of one isolated research project. They had been systematically hunted and enslaved by multiple civilizations across the galaxy. The Zephyrin implants were just the latest in a long line of technologies designed to exploit and control them. The memories they steal, Viridian continued as Dr. Park worked to remove the final implants, are not just personal. They contain our navigation knowledge, our understanding of quantum mechanics, our ability to find the paths between stars. Each captured dragon makes their oppressor stronger, more capable of finding and capturing others. Captain Rodriguez was already formulating plans for action. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. This isn't just a crime against the dragons. It's a threat to galactic stability. If unauthorized parties have access to advanced navigation and quantum manipulation technologies, the Council will not help, Viridian said sadly. Many of its members profit from dragon knowledge. They tell themselves that we are extinct, that the technologies they use are archaeological discoveries. It is easier than admitting they benefit from our ongoing slavery. The final implant came free with a wet, sucking sound that made everyone in the surgical suite wince. As Dr. Park set it aside with the others, Viridian's entire body seemed to relax for the first time since they had rescued it from the ocean depths. Free, the dragon whispered, and the word carried such overwhelming relief and gratitude that several of the humans found tears in their eyes. But even as they celebrated the successful surgery, the tactical situation was deteriorating. Lieutenant Torres's voice crackled over the communication system with urgent news. Captain, the pursuing ships have been joined by a Zephyrian science vessel. They're demanding that we surrender the specimen for return to authorized research facilities. Specimen, Marcus said angrily. They're still calling Viridian a specimen. Captain Rodriguez activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Captain Rodriguez. We have in our care a free and sapient being who is illegally imprisoned and subjected to non-consensual experimentation. We will not be surrendering anyone to return to such conditions." The response came immediately, but not from the pursuing ships. Instead, a new voice joined their communication frequency, calm, authoritative, and speaking with the unmistakable precision of a high-ranking Zephyrian official. "Captain Rodriguez, this is Scientist Prime Zethera of the Zephyrian Research Collective. You are harboring stolen property of significant scientific value. The creature in your possession is a Class 7 xenobiological asset, acquired through legal salvage operations. You will surrender it immediately or face charges of theft and interference with authorized research." "Legal salvage?" Dr. Park said incredulously. "They're claiming they found Viridian floating in space?" Viridian's response was a sound that needed no translation, a roar of pure rage that shook the entire ship. When it spoke again, its voice carried a fury that made the air seem to vibrate. "Lies," the dragon said. "I was taken from my nest world when I was barely past hatching age. I have been their prisoner for 700 of your human years. There was nothing legal about my capture. 700 years. The number hung in the air like an accusation. This dragon had been a prisoner for longer than human civilization had existed as a spacefaring species, subjected to experiments and procedures that had stripped away its memories, its identity, and its freedom. "Captain," Dr. Nakamura said urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the Zephyrian vessel. Whatever they're planning to do, it's going to be on a scale that could destroy this entire asteroid field. They're willing to commit genocide to cover up their crimes," Captain Rodriguez realized. "If they can eliminate us, Viridian, and all the evidence we've gathered—" "No," Viridian said, rising to its full height despite the confines of the cargo hold. "No more running. No more hiding. It is time my people learned the truth." Before anyone could stop it, the dragon moved to the ship's communication array and began to sing. But this wasn't the acoustic manipulation they had witnessed before. This was something far more sophisticated and powerful. Viridian was using its voice to override the Zephyrian communication systems, broadcasting directly to every ship, station, and inhabited world within 1,000 light years. The song that emerged was unlike anything any of them had ever heard. It was the story of the deep flight dragons, told in harmonics and frequencies that transcended language barriers. It carried the pain of centuries of captivity, the joy of brief freedom, and, most importantly, the locations of hidden research facilities where other dragons were still being held. "It's a call to arms," Dr. Nakamura realized as he watched the acoustic patterns on his instruments. "Viridian is calling to every surviving dragon in the galaxy, telling them that freedom is possible, that someone has escaped." The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, communication networks began to light up with reports of strange acoustic phenomena. Ships reported hearing impossible songs in the depths of space. Researchers in supposedly empty sectors detected massive life forms moving through the cosmic winds. And in the hidden facilities where dragons had been held captive for centuries, security systems began to fail as their prisoners responded to Viridian's call with songs of their own. "The Zephyrian vessel is pulling back," Lieutenant Torres reported in amazement. "All pursuing ships are withdrawing to minimum safe distance." "They know what's coming," Captain Rodriguez said grimly. "If every surviving dragon in the galaxy is awakening, if they're all singing together." Viridian's song reached a crescendo that seemed to make space itself vibrate with power. And then, from the deepest reaches of the galaxy, an answer came back. Not one voice, but dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Every dragon that had survived centuries of captivity was adding its voice to the cosmic chorus. And together they were creating something that defied all understanding of physics and acoustics. The asteroid field around them began to move, not chaotically, but with purpose and intelligence. Space itself was responding to the dragon's song, bending, and flowing like water around the research vessel. The pursuing ships found themselves gently, but irresistibly pushed away, carried by currents in space that shouldn't have existed. Impossible, Dr. Nakamura breathed. They're manipulating space-time through acoustic resonance. The level of understanding required to do that. Now you begin to understand why they feared us, Viridian said, its voice filled with sad pride. We do not just navigate the cosmic winds. We are the cosmic winds. We sing the songs that hold the galaxy together, and when we're silenced, the very fabric of space suffers. As the song continued, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Ancient research facilities were being abandoned as their subjects broke free. Ships carrying stolen dragon technology found their systems failing as the creatures whose knowledge had built them withdrew their unwilling cooperation. And in the deepest reaches of space, massive forms were beginning to move, dragons who had been thought extinct for millennia emerging from hiding places where they had waited for the call to freedom. The Council will have no choice but to act now, Captain Rodriguez said. This isn't something they can cover up or ignore. The Council will try to find a way to use this situation to their advantage, Viridian corrected. But my people are no longer willing to be used. We have been patient for too long, hoping that if we remained hidden, the younger species would eventually mature into wisdom and compassion. Instead, they have become more sophisticated predators. As the dragon song reached its conclusion, Viridian turned to face the humans who had rescued it from the depths of an alien ocean. You have given me freedom, Marcus Chun. You have restored my voice to me. But more than that, you have shown me that not all of the younger species are lost to greed and cruelty. Marcus found himself speechless as the dragon continued. My people are awakening across the galaxy, and they are angry. They have suffered for centuries while the galactic community pretended they did not exist. There will be those who call for vengeance, who want to use our power to punish those who have wronged us. And what will you tell them? Dr. Park asked. Viridian's massive head turned toward Marcus, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of centuries of wisdom and pain. I will tell them about a human who dove into the crushing depths of an alien ocean to rescue a creature he had never seen before. I will tell them about a research team that risked their lives to remove the instruments of our torment. I will tell them that there is still hope for understanding between the species of the galaxy, if we are brave enough to reach for it. The dragon's words hung in the air as the last echoes of the galactic song faded into silence. Around them, space had returned to normal, but everyone aboard the Deep Explorer knew that the galaxy had just changed forever. What happens now? Captain Rodriguez asked. Now, Viridian said, spreading its wings in a gesture that somehow conveyed both strength and peace. We teach the galaxy what it means to live in harmony with beings who can sing the songs that hold the stars in place. And we pray that they are wise enough to listen. In the distance, the lights of 1,000 ships could be seen approaching from all directions. Some were fleeing the scene of their crimes. Others were coming to investigate the cosmic phenomenon they had witnessed. And still others were coming to see for themselves if the deep flight dragons had truly returned to the galaxy. The age of dragon slavery was ending, but the age of dragon renaissance was just beginning. And it had all started with one human diver who had chosen compassion over fear in the crushing depths of an alien ocean 0.3 months after the rescue of Viridian from the depths of Kepler, 442b's ocean. The galaxy had become a very different place. Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Deep Flight Station, watching as dragons of impossible size and beauty moved through space like living ships, their wings catching starlight as they navigated the cosmic winds with grace that defied physics. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, human engineering combined with dragon acoustics to create something that neither species could have achieved alone. It floated in the gravitational balance point between 3 stars, a neutral territory where the emerging dragon civilization could meet with representatives from the galactic community. Status report on the liberation operations? Marcus asked Commander Sarah Martinez, who had been promoted to lead the joint human-dragon task force responsible for locating and freeing captured dragons throughout the galaxy. Facility 17 was liberated this morning, Sarah reported, consulting her tablet. 43 dragons freed, ranging in age from hatchlings to elders who had been captive for over 1,000 years. The Nexri government is claiming they had no knowledge of the facility's true purpose, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Marcus nodded grimly. In the 3 months since Viridian's cosmic call had awakened the dragon diaspora, they had discovered the true scope of the conspiracy. It wasn't just the Zephyrians. Nearly every major civilization in the galaxy had been involved in dragon capture and exploitation to some degree. The technologies that powered their fastest ships, their most advanced computers, their most sophisticated weapons, all of it had been built on stolen dragon knowledge. Any resistance from the facility operators? None, Sarah said with satisfaction. Word has spread about what happens when dragons sing together in anger. Most of the illegal research operations are being abandoned before we even arrive. Through the station's massive viewport, Marcus could see Viridian approaching, its massive form moving through space without any visible means of propulsion. In the months since its rescue, the dragon had grown stronger and more vibrant. Its scales now shone with colors that human languages had no names for, and when it sang, space itself seemed to listen and respond. Marcus came Viridian's voice through the station's communication system, speaking in the precise English it had learned from their time together. The Elder Council has reached a decision regarding the Zephyrian Research Collective. What kind of decision? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. They will face judgment, Viridian replied as it came alongside the station. Not the quick justice of destruction, but something more educational. They will experience what it means to be studied against their will. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The awakened dragons were not just powerful, they were angry, and their anger was righteous. For centuries, they had been captured, imprisoned, experimented upon, and killed by civilizations that refused to acknowledge their sapience. Now that they had the power to strike back, some of them wanted revenge. Viridian, we've talked about this, Marcus said carefully. Revenge isn't going to solve anything. It will just create new cycles of violence. And yet justice must be served, Viridian replied. My people have been patient for too long. We have tried hiding, tried peaceful contact, tried negotiation. Each time we were met with nets and restraint fields and surgical instruments. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the station's sensor array. Lieutenant Torres, now serving as the station's tactical officer, called out from his position at the central command console. Multiple ships approaching from the Zephyrian sector, Torres reported. Configurations suggest a diplomatic envoy, but they're heavily escorted. Put the lead vessel through, Marcus ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the crystalline features of Scientist Prime Zethera, the same Zephyrian who had demanded Viridian's return 3 months earlier. But now, instead of arrogant authority, her expression showed something that might have been fear. Marcus Chun, she said, her translated voice carrying formal diplomatic inflections, I come bearing an official response from the Zephyrian Science Consortium to the accusations that have been made against our research programs. Accusations? Dr. Park said incredulously from her position at the medical station. We have documented evidence of 700 years of illegal imprisonment and non-consensual experimentation. The consortium acknowledges that certain research protocols may have exceeded ethical boundaries, Zethera continued, clearly uncomfortable with the admission. However, we maintain that our studies were conducted for the greater good of galactic civilization. The knowledge gained from dragon subjects has advanced medicine, physics, and technology in ways that have benefited countless beings. Viridian's response was a sound that needed no translation, a low, harmonious note that somehow conveyed infinite sadness and bottomless rage. When the dragon spoke, its voice carried the weight of centuries of pain. Greater good, Viridian repeated. They speak of greater good while my children died on their laboratory tables. They speak of advancement while my people forgot their own names under the influence of memory suppression drugs. We were not aware that the subjects were sapient, Zathura said, though her body language suggested she knew how weak the defense sounded. The neural patterns were unlike any recognized intelligence markers. You were not aware because you chose not to be aware, Dr. Nakamura interjected from his xenobiology station. The evidence of dragon intelligence was overwhelming from the beginning. You simply classified it as complex instinctual behavior because that made your research programs legally permissible. The diplomatic exchange was interrupted by a new alarm. This time, the sensors were detecting something far more concerning than approaching ships. Torres's voice carried a note of awe and terror as he made his report. Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Something is bending space. Through the viewport, they could see the impossible sight of space itself rippling like water. Stars that should have been light years away appeared to be moving closer, their light distorted by gravitational effects that defied conventional physics. The Elder Council arrives, Viridian said simply. What emerged from the rippling space-time was beyond description. These were not individual dragons like Viridian, but something far more ancient and powerful. They were massive beyond comprehension, their forms shifting and changing as if they existed partially outside normal dimensional space. When they sang, reality itself seemed to vibrate in harmony with their voices. Greetings, youngest siblings, one of the elders said, its voice somehow audible to everyone despite the vacuum of space. We have slept long in the deep places between stars, waiting for the songs of freedom to wake us. Now we come to reclaim what was stolen. Zathura's crystalline features went pale as she realized what she was seeing. These were not just the dragons her people had been capturing and experimenting on. These were their ancestors being so ancient and powerful that they had become part of the cosmic structure itself. Impossible, she breathed. The deep space surveys showed no signs of intelligence in the interstellar medium. Did you think we would reveal ourselves to predators? Another elder asked, amusement coloring its cosmic voice. We have been watching, waiting, hoping that the younger species would grow beyond their nay.